Hello, good evening. Ayan. So welcome to Alpha TV for tonight's episode, June 24, 2022. We'll be having design thinking. Ayan, parang mali pa yung spelling niya la. Design thinking 101. So yan. So walang G dapat 'yon, no. All right, so check lang namin kung talagang you'll pay attention, all right? Okay, so let's just wait maybe 3 more minutes and then we'll jump into directly dun sa ating session for today. So it's probably a 60 to 80 minutes of session for tonight. We'll be talking about design thinking, its fundamentals and probably some extensions and some tools and techniques that are used across the five phases of the design thinking process. So invite your friends, your colleagues, your classmates, or anyone that would be virtually interested to know more about this design thinking class for tonight. So I'll see you in 7:05 to start formally our session. All right, so I'm back. And again, welcome to our Design Thinking 101 brought to you by Alpha TV. My name is Felix Concepcion Veroya, the founder and CEO of Aztec's Page Academy, founder of MEng-IE, co-founder and head of strategic partnerships of Farmbox, managing director of IXL CIE Review Center, and representing various organizations right this evening. And I'll be your facilitator for this probably 60 to 90 minutes of learning session for Design Thinking 101. So I hope you are all good for tonight. And I encourage everyone to still invite their friends and colleagues and peers that might be interested for this learning session. But by the time being, let's probably proceed to our session for tonight. So here's my short profile for those who have not yet known me for maybe from the previous sessions and from other engagements. So I'm working for the industry and such for about a decade already. So I was able to create projects amounting to $500 million in total, probably. I was able to mentor about 20,000. This is not updated anymore. 20,000 people from from students to up until young professionals and even MSMEs or micro, small, and medium enterprises owners and proponents. Been awarded with various awards, both locally and internationally. Thanks for your continued support and of course trust. And I like to write things about things that I would like to share. So I've written 3 books which are internationally published. One about problem solving, one about creativity, and the tools that are used, and the other one about managing virtual teams. And I also have my own column at the Philippine Business and News. So I write things, of course, about my areas of expertise, from lifelong learning to continuous improvement, innovation, analytics, sustainability, project management, and the like. So you can, try to search for the Philippine Business and News and look for the column, the Catalyst, and you'll see some of my. I have about 40 articles that I've written since last year, and of course, as mentioned, I'm leading some of international installations of organizations here to the Philippines. Some of them are the Association for Manufacturing Excellence and the International Association of Innovation Professionals. So yeah, that's pretty much my profile is, and not focusing more on that, but I really want to focus more on you and what you would learn coming from this session for today. So we'll talk about what is design thinking, what is the design thinking framework, and we'll have a walkthrough per phase of the design thinking framework. So uh, just to disclaim you, we will not be having any workshops here. We're actually doing some program to create this certified design thinking professional program, and this will probably be the same material, but on top of that there will be workshops. So this is just probably a high level introduction of what is design thinking really is. So let's start with some numbers. 69%. Okay. Did you know that 69% of respondents coming from a survey conducted by Experience Point say that design thinking makes their innovation processes more efficient? Okay, so imagine you are in an organization, in a company that you try to develop, or maybe you try to innovate some of your products, some of your processes, some of your services. And if you don't have structure, can you imagine that? So with design thinking in place, so these processes, specifically focusing on innovation, they become more efficient. So having that said, what really is design thinking? So design thinking from IDEO, which is an organization that focuses on the use of innovation principles and facets. Design thinking is a process for creative problem solving, right? So if you're here tonight, if you're here today, if you're watching this video right now, can you share in our chat box, or in our comment box, or wherever you are learning this particular video or session or course, can you type in or share with your co-participants what is a problem-solving methodology that you know aside from design thinking? Okay, so everyone coming from Zoom, everyone coming from YouTube, can you share that design thinking principle that you know aside from problem solving methodology that you know aside from design thinking? Come on, I'm gonna give you 1 minute to share. So share in your chat box, please. Type in your chat box or comment box. Okay, 30 seconds more. Okay, so so some of you are sending me personal messages via Zoom. Someone mentioned about Lean Six Sigma. Someone mentioned about Kepner Chego. Someone mentioned about PDCA. Someone talk about waterfall, project management. So yeah, those are all problem solving methodologies. But design thinking is the one that probably focuses on the creative side of really solving problems. So from Tim Brown, which is a British industrial designer and the president of IDEO, design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the needs of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. So it's basically a culmination and integration of several facets and areas of application that would focus more on, creating that opportunity for the business to succeed on maybe on um whatever area it's driving at the moment. So you would be seeing design thinking being used to try to create opportunities for new products and services, or maybe identifying new market segments, or maybe innovating an existing product or service that is already out there but is not interacting that well with the users or the customers or consumers. So those are some of the applications that you would see in terms of design thinking. So design thinking, so let's try to break down a little bit into its components. Design thinking takes a human-centered approach to problem solving. So what do we mean by human-centered approach? So we're talking about focusing on what are the pain points. Okay? What are the pain points, or what are the unmet needs and wants, okay, of your users and customers or target market. So there could be like some instances that their products and services were created because of an experience of its founder, or maybe its inventor or its innovator, of like a product or service or a certain experience that he or she haven't had the good one. And coming from that experience, what he did or what she did was basically try to create something that would address that unmet need and wants. Okay. So say for example, during our time as students, there was no single training and certification organization that would offer democratized access to Lean Six Sigma products. So what I did when I graduated and I had the chance to become a practitioner and a certified professional for this kind of Lean Six Sigma um, problem solving methodology or process improvement methodology is that uh, I told myself that from that pain point, I would want to create solutions that would address that and eventually offer this to students and professionals that might be interested. And I did that. So that's basically one of the design thinking principle that I would like to share with you. We focus on the human unmet needs and wants. Okay, so this process, okay, it encourages creative consideration of a wide array of innovative solutions. So there's a lot of tools and techniques that are templates that we will be using, but of course we'll be talking more about that later on. So it's really more of a toolbox. Okay? So where you can actually get like the tools and templates and techniques you would deem fit to the specific problem or opportunity or gap that you will be able to identify. So it is as much as a mindset as a process. So it's later on you'll see a slide talking about it. It's actually more of mindsets plus process plus template. So it's basically an integration of all the things that would that would move you from one state to another. So these are the three lenses of human-centered design. So if you're here today, you're watching this video, you're watching this course, so it's probably that you're a student, you're trying to figure out like a design project, or you're a student, you're trying to figure out like a topic or like a product or service that you would want to create for your feasibility study, for your technopreneurship subject, or for your research, or for your thesis, or maybe you're some young professional that would want to create like a startup, or maybe you're employed currently as a corporate employee and you would want to innovate some of your process in your organization. So this basically human-centered design thing is going to be something that you would find useful moving forward. So we have like three areas that you can see on the left side. So we're talking about desirability, feasibility, and viability. So desirability answers the question, what do people desire? So if we go back to the previous slide, we're talking about certain unmet wants and needs, right? So, but of course, needs and wants would be the better phrase because probably we're trying to prioritize, of course, the needs, right? So what do people desire that would, satisfy these needs and wants? Or so that's basically, excuse me, so that's basically what we want to ask first. Then followed by, so for example, if we've answered that already and we try to come up with like some solutions to that, the next question would be, is the solution is something that is technically and organizationally feasible? So we're not just talking about things and products and services that could be created and can be like a starting point for startups. We're also talking about processes and products and services coming from established organizations that might be a little bit outpaced already with the with the fast moving world that we have right now. Okay, so that's going to be the second question, and the third question would focus on what can be financially viable. So we're talking about, is this something that would create profit for our organization, or is it something that we will not bleed money out of it and just gain nothing from it? So it's pretty much about these three questions about desirability, feasibility, and viability that would come first into your mind when you talk about human-centered design, and pretty much how you would integrate like the technical, organizational, and financial component of it. So on the right side, you can see here that the design thinking process talks about the desirability component first. So you have seen here a Venn diagram which pretty much talks about the left representation that we had earlier. But what is different here is that on the Venn diagram, you are seeing, of course, the overlapping areas. So if you see the people and the business, you're talking about emotional innovation. So whenever you want to innovate something, and if you focus on the people and the business component out of the three, you'll create an emotional innovation. So we're talking about brands, relationships, and marketing as key enablers. So if we talk about people component and technology component, so we're talking about functional innovations. So if we talk about the technology and the business components out of the three that is being presented here, we're talking about cross innovation. So this pretty much explains what are the types of innovations that we can create by integrating, of course, the components of the human-centered design that we've talked about earlier. And this is happening through the design thinking process. So the design thinking process uses both deductive and abductive approaches to solve problems. So we're talking about, looking back on our experiences, the patterns of thinking that we had in of the group of people or communities we're trying to help or create solutions for. We're talking about their stories. We're talking about observations that we did, and of course, we combine that, okay, with futuristic solutions, or maybe thinking about the future, forward thinking. So we're talking about imagination, we're talking about possibilities, we're talking about stories that we would want to tell, and uncertainty. So combining these components of looking back on what we already had and looking forward to what we can achieve, so that basically fuels the design thinking process on solving problems. So what makes design thinking a unique way of thinking? So first, using both sides of the brain to solve problems. We're talking about creative and analytical uh, sides of the brain. Okay? Switching at will between rational and intuitive approach. So it's basically data driven, and then we try to be creative, and then switching from two modes and such, iterating between analysis and creation. We deal with ill-defined problems. So we're talking about human-centered or pain points, okay, as mentioned earlier. And we try as much as possible to target and address that experience. So we're talking about improving and innovating things around the human experience. Okay? So that's the focus of design thinking. Now, what are the applications of design thinking? So here are some of the famous brands that we know. So you see Starbucks launching this mobile payments app alternative to the SB card or the Starbucks card. So store lines move now 10 to 20% faster. So Apple, retail stores designed around activities, not products. So most profitable retail store per square foot. So imagine that they were able to innovate um, the space that they're using in their stores. So Procter and Gamble launched Tide pods so customers don't have to measure. So estimated earning of 100, imagine this, $131 million in 2012. And Adobe changed product-based model to cloud-based subscription model. So Creative Cloud software revenue increased by 44% since 2013. Okay, so this pretty much gives us a picture of how design thinking is disrupting, not just startups or medium and small, medium, micro, small, and medium enterprises, but also big brands and key players in the industries like this four brands here. Now, what are the areas where design thinking could be applied? So we're talking about product design, so software design, software creation, development, yeah, service and experience design. Sorry, we're talking more of service industries, business design, business model design. So if you're, if you would want to start a business and you're thinking of how you could, start it, well, design thinking as a process and its tools and techniques could help you out. Leadership, so there are like projects that I've seen, passion projects that I've seen that improve leadership, no, as using the design thinking process. Organizational changes, and yeah, as mentioned, startups. So how design thinking works, what is the framework? Okay, give me like 1 minute. I'll pause for 1 minute, sorry. All right, so thank you for waiting. The design thinking works just if you can still remember, I've also had the chance to share with you Design Sprint 101. So Design Sprint is basically a derivative of design thinking. So probably you'll be seeing like similar components or phases from Design Sprint that is also available, of course, from its parent, the design thinking. So design thinking is from Empathize, followed by Define, Ideate, Prototype, and Test. So the first phase, which is Empathize, talks about who is my user. So we're trying to understand who will be the user of this certain product, process, or service. So what matters to this person? So what is something that is valuable, or what is valuable to these users? So that's Empathize. So we learned about the audience for whom we are designing through various tools and techniques that I'll be sharing with you, of course, later on. Next would be define. So define what are their needs. So probably Empathize is more of what is the profile of our users, of our target market. Okay. Then define is pretty much what are their needs. So this is the point wherein we create that view that is based on the user needs and the insights that we were able to gather from the Empathize phase, followed by Ideate. So we now generate as much as many ideas that could we possibly generate. So we brainstorm and come up with as many creative solutions as possible. And then from that, in between that and prototype, we of course choose like features of the solutions, or probably one solution that would fit the identified needs of the user or pain points of the user. So that's the next one would be prototype. So this is where we try to create representations of my solution and how, and probably how we can test it on the next phase. So it's more of building the representation of one or more of your ideas so that you can show it to others, specifically talking about the users, or the target market or target users of this uh, process, products, and services. Okay, so it doesn't have to be perfect when you're doing prototyping, and we'll talk more about that later on. And of course, last but not the least is test. So in the test phase, we share the prototype to our user and get their feedbacks, and try to understand what went well, what went wrong, or what worked, what didn't, and do iterations. If it was not mentioned earlier, this design thinking process, the one that you see here, the 5 phases, it dwells on, like, it's a structured approach, as you can see, but it's an iterative model. So meaning whenever you test something out of the design thinking process, it's okay for you to go back to the prototype and try to fix and apply this findings that you were able to get from your user testing, and that's basically how it works. It's not something that you would perfect and then you launch. It's something that is iterative in nature, focus on it's centered on the human needs and wants, or the pain points. And yeah, it's a process of ideating ideas and getting insights from users once you've done that. So that's pretty much what design thinking looks like. So it's not really a linear process. So it's somehow it goes back to some point, okay, whenever you learn insights from your users. So the framework is basically from the two words design thinking. Design means action planning, and thinking is more of mindset. So it's a combination of your action plans being realized through several layers of mindset. So design thinking is the proper attitude and frame of mind, along with the right series of actions in order to solve a problem. So it's basically you generating like some sort of idea and then trying to make it happen using a series of actions that is aligned to your objective, or your goal of doing this entire design thinking process and application. So that's it. Action planning plus mindset equals, of course, or is equivalent to design thinking. Now, this is how it looks like. So if we'll go back and try to reinforce, this is pretty much how it looks like when we talk about um, design thinking. First, empathize is learning about the audience from who you are designing. Again, define is creating your point of view, or HMW, based on your insights from the empathy stage. Third would be ideate, brainstorming and coming up with creative solutions. Prototype would be building a representation of one or more of your ideas so that you can show it to others. And last would, and of course not the least, would be returning to your original user group and testing your ideas for feedback, and eventually your second iteration of your prototype. So that's basically how it works. Now, if we look into certain each phases with certain activities and tools and deliverables, so I'll be walking you through with the tools and techniques that is enclosed in this particular toolbox. So there's this pretty much of it, but of course will not cover them all for tonight. So I'm pretty much showing it to you, okay? And for you to have an idea that these are tools and techniques that might be familiar already to your end. So let's start with the first phase, which is basically the empathize phase. So in empathize phase, what we do is we basically, of course, try to understand our audience. So we do user interviews, just like what you're doing when you have projects at school, or maybe you're doing market research for your company, or you're doing some process improvements for your organizations, right? So we do informal chats. So because you would want to immerse yourself into this group of people, into this community, into these users, right? So you would want to empathize. That's why it's called empathize. You would want to be on their shoes, try to understand what they experience, right? As users, as as those people and individuals who are using the process. So we do also observations, we do shadowing, or we go along with them in their day in day out. It's like day in the life of or dialogue. So if you're familiar with that, mystery shopping, if we talk about like certain products or items, picture taking, of course, the document, and immersion. I mentioned this earlier. So there's a lot of tools that or activities that are happening. So if we talk about certain tools, we're talking about interview checklist. Okay, we're talking about observation checklist. We're talking about writing tools, writing narratives, documenting their stories, getting those insights. Flip charts and papers, of course, to visualize probably what have you taken already, what have you acquired from these users, and of course camera if you would want to document in terms of certain scenarios and visuals. So after the empathize phase, you need to of course create the persona. Well, we'll talk more about each of the deliverables and tools probably later on, some of them of course. So personas, we're talking about empathy maps, we're talking about feedbacks of the user, we're talking about problems that we were able to identify. So once we are done with the first phase, we move now to the second phase, which is define phase. So during the define phase, we're talking about workshops. We're talking about shareholder meetings. We're trying to understand, coming from this user group, what really is their problem? Because there could be a lot of problems that they were able to identify, right? So you would want to, refine, reinforce, and involve people that are users, that are deciders, that are the deciders of if ever I do this solution, will this be something that would be, is it desirable? Is it viable? Is it feasible, correct? So we're talking about tools like drawings and writing tools. We're talking about post-its like this one. During prior pandemic, we're using this. Of course, now we're using Google Sheets and Notion, Mural. So like softwares like those. We're talking about flip charts and whiteboards, user feedback. Okay. So what are the deliverables? So we're talking about design briefs or point of views plus how might we, stakeholder maps, context maps, customer journeys, opportunity maps. So that's pretty much the define phase. So coming from those mapping, coming from those meetings and workshops, eventually we are we're trying to figure out what really is the pain point that we would want to address. So given that we were able to complete all the requirements of the define phase, next would be the ideate phase. So in ideate, we're talking about from the phase itself, ideation activities, or to put it in simplest term, ideating is basically generating the ideas that you need to address the defined pain point of your users. So we're talking about brainstormings, again, workshops, mind maps, sketching, and drawing. So you're pretty much seeing a lot of brainstorming and workshops, because it's design thinking as a process. It's not an individual process. It's a group process, and the objective is basically to create what we call the shared brain. So we're not talking about us just single as single problem solvers or innovators or process improvement professionals operating this creative problem methodology. We're talking about involving really the users, asking who are experts to come up with real solutions that would address this pain points that our users are experiencing. So you're saying pretty much common jargons here that is being highlighted all throughout each of the phases. So yeah, just to put context, of course, we're talking about drawing and writing tools, post-its, flip charts, personas again from your Empathize, design briefs from your Define, and then brainstorming tools. Why? Because this will be your basis. So I have to know who is my users. I have to know what are their problems before I can ideate. It's not, it's not just you ideating what you want to ideate. So it's the wisdom comes into the picture wherein you try to, of course, you not try, but you have to, you must, you must align whatever your generated solution is to the users and their pain points. So that's pretty much how it works. And so we're talking about ideas and concepts already delivered, sketches, prioritization maps, affinity maps, and idea evaluation. So of course, after this, you'll have to create prototypes. So it's not that if you have like 5 ideas, so you'll have to create prototypes for all, right? So probably you'll be selecting one, or probably you're getting good or best features coming from each of the generated alternative solution or ideated solutions, something like that. And yeah, just not for me to forget, design thinking, just like design sprint, it's basically using the power of um, sketching. So you're also seeing a lot of sketching there, drawing, right? So it's because drawing, sketching, it improves creativity. So that's the reason behind. Next, if we already have chosen that particular idea that we would want to create the prototype, or the good features, okay, coming from the several solutions that might be available. So next phase would be prototype. So from the prototype phase, we're talking about several types of prototyping. So we have space, physical, paper construction. We do have wireframe building for softwares or for user interfaces. We're talking about storyboards. So we do that. Role plays could also be the case. So for example, if the solution is like maybe a service-oriented solution, or um, something similar to that, we're doing a lot, or we have a lot of prototype activities that we could use. So tools would pretty much be aligned to that. So we're talking about like certain softwares, maybe physical art materials. You would be amazed, if ever you haven't had the chance to experience this firsthand. So it's a really enjoyable activity and workshop if you happen to have the chance to be in a design thinking workshop. So deliverables, of course, there should be a prototype or a wireframe or storyboards. So it would be depending on what is the solution that you've come up with. So after that, we go to the test phase, wherein we do a lot of main focus would be user testing. So we observe while the users are basically navigating through our prototype. So we take pictures, we do evaluate, and we do discuss what we have observed and what we have acquired from as insights coming from this testing. So we're talking about briefing checklist, interview checklist, observation checklist, and then of course the prototype that we want to test. And as a deliverable, we're talking about the actual user feedback coming from our target consumers or users, observations, evaluation maps, and what are your proposed refinement as we move forward to the next iteration of our design thinking output. So that pretty much explains how the activities and what are the tools that we need to use when it comes to the design thinking process, as well as the deliverables on each of the phase. Now, question is, what problems or opportunities do you have in your respective areas? Can you share some of your or some of the things that you are able to think a pain point maybe coming from your area or community of practice, or maybe your own pain point that you're seeing that you could create an innovative solution moving forward. And maybe, who knows, that could be like the next unicorn or the startup that we're waiting for to solve, certain problems and common problems like you and me experience. So if you have that, can you share, or maybe you don't have to answer, but just think about it. If you already have that answer, you can just get a pen or paper or get your phone and then write it. Okay. Whenever you have like some great idea in mind, not just opportunity, because those opportunities would probably or eventually create the solutions, or would start the process of applying the design thinking and create the solutions. So what I suggest as a form of creative exercise, whenever you have something in mind, always tell, maybe I don't know if telling someone is really good idea, but here at Aslex, what we do is, say for example, if I have an idea of a new product or a new service that would probably address the pain points of our customers or our user or our current user base or audience base, I always tell our CEO, our CFO, to share it, and not just for me to just uh let it pass. Or probably if you have like a small notebook or even the notes in your phone, just write it down. And then after some time you can get back to it and then try to scrutinize how to make it that happen. Because thinking ideas, it's just the first part of you being innovative, right? So creativity, it's your ability. I always tell this whenever I talk about innovation. Creativity is the process of you generating these ideas. It's part of the design thinking, of course. Um, but making that happen, that's another story. And that's where we get value coming from your ideas, right? So yeah, try to exercise that. Okay, so moving forward, of course, so I'm gonna walk you through on this one with the time given. So we're talking about empathize. Again, we as it does to reinforce again and again. We want to understand the experience, situation, and emotion of the user for whom we are designing for this solution. So we try to observe, we try to engage ourselves, we try to immerse, or we try to be immersed, and that's how you empathize. Okay. So we've seen this earlier, the activities, tools, and techniques, and the deliverables for Empathize phase. So it's like, for example, if we do some Empathize activities related to immersion. So for example, the magnetic resonance imaging or MRI for children. So MRI scans require a person not to move, but little kids cry and move around. Of course, they are kids. They'll do that. They'll be scared because they'll be confined in this like hole that's a little bit dark. So by immersing in the experience of a kid, they learn that. So if you can see in the picture from the second picture from the left, there's an adult who is actually trying to experience an MRI. So for a kid, an MRI room must be very stressful and frightening experience. So look what they did. So they have like, it's like the things that you see on the playpen, those stickers, those designs. So a kid-friendly MRI, simple commands to get the scan done accurately become part of an adventure. So they see it as like um some sort of a play style. So not something that is stressful and frightening as a kid, right? So if we try to use observation and engagement, so this is one thing that Starbucks had experienced and did. Okay, so hyper-paced over expansion. So brand the image, customers see the same stores everywhere they go. Okay, so through observing and engaging in their communities, especially of course they're the coffee aficionados that goes to Starbucks. Designers from Starbucks learned customers dislike the chain's cookie cutter feel and lack of local relevance. So what is meant by cookie cutter is just like, it's the same style all over the places, right? So what they did was to design the stores with a global reach and local relevance. So meaning the brand is still multinational, but the look becomes something that is embedded within probably the culture or the environment of where these stores will be located. So reflecting the neighborhood and its architectural history, beverages are offered based on local preference. So I haven't experienced local beverages. Probably I don't know. I haven't been through outside the country, but I could attest that Starbucks is actually pulling this design. If you happen to go to other Starbucks stores not within your area or reach as of now, like for example, if you go from here at Batangas, stores are entirely different in terms of style. If you go in a store like in the city, it's a different style when you go to a store in, let's say for example, at Tagaytay. So the architecture and the feel and the design is really different, of course. So that's one application of Empathize. An airport lounge experience which reinforces observation engagement. So in the face of competition, Singapore Airlines wants to create a consistent experience to stay as the world's most preferred airline. So using observation and engagement, okay, with their customers, of course, staff, management, and designers, they learned that customers want distinct personal spaces, greater personalized services, and a delectable selection of food and beverages. Okay? So Silver Crest lounges designed with home away from home experience. It brings Singapore Airlines in-flight experience to the lounge in 15 cities. So imagine this. Okay? So this is how Empathize works. And this just Empathize. Okay? I mean, this is our results of our Empathize exercises. Okay? So again, how do you empathize with your user? You observe, you watch them, their actions, take note of their nonverbal cues and body languages, not just what they are telling you. You meet, you try to meet them in person or meet them virtually nowadays. So we can do that so that you can get the context of the situation that they are into. You ask questions, of course, non-leading questions and open-ended questions that would probably give you more insights rather than asking close-ended questions and leading questions, of course. And more importantly, listen. Okay, so try. You have to be a good listener so that you can be someone that is good in empathizing with other people. So you have to listen. You don't have to say anything about. You can ask questions, but the hero of this phase would probably be and always be your users. Okay. So here examples of persona. So persona is just like the customer profile, if I would say. So you put like basic information that would represent your customer profile or your user profile. So you get their basic information, their motivations, their goals, their frustrations, their personalities, their interests, the brands that they support. So you're pretty much trying to get really um uh, in the head of your users. Okay. So in one of the startups that I support, Farmbox, so we have this like uh profile, a customer profile. So we have like two profiles that we serve. We serve those who basically uh, buys the box and the one that uses the box, which is the farmers. So we have profiles for them so that we can understand, so we can get their insights about what solutions or what are the things that they need. Okay, so that we can satisfy them as a solutions provider. So we also have or empathize, we are doing this empathy mapping. So we're talking about getting what they think and feel, what they see, what they say and do, what they hear, what are their pain points, and what are the gains. Okay? So it's pretty much the templates that we use. So software developers concerned about work. Okay, so these are typical answers that you would see coming from that particular context. But yeah, this is called an empathy map. Okay. So yeah, so that's pretty much about the first phase. Again, we'll not dwell into, of course, into details. I'm just trying to show you how it pretty works. So after that empathize phase, we go to phase two, which is define phase. So on the define phase, we're trying to process and synthesize the findings, the insights that we were able to acquire from the empathize phase and convert this into something that is called the point of view or the HMW or how might we. So we're talking about the user, their needs, and the insights that we were able to get from the previous phase. So here are the activities, the tools to use, and the deliverables as we discussed earlier. So what is the how might we? You might be here today and you've been through other trainings and courses that focuses on a different style on defining the problem. So this is called the HMW approach or how might we. So this is a method that allows your team to take the insights and pain points they hear and positively reframe them. So HMWs create an active framework for resolving the challenges. Okay. So how guides the team members to believe that the answer is out there might lets team members know their HMW statement might or might not work and either possibly is okay. And we reminds team members that the design sprint is about teamwork and building on each other's ideas. So here are some examples of a certain problem that we were able to identify, and of course the equivalent HMW. So users aren't aware of full product offering. So we changed that into an HMW, and this is how it looks like. How might we increase awareness of full product offerings? So the next example is users are often unsure about which form to complete when they file their taxes. So the good example would be how might we make users feel confident they are filing their taxes correctly. Another problem example is users find the return process difficult. So a good HMW is how might we make the return process quick and intuitive. Okay? So these are examples of HMW. Some examples would ask you or some facilitators would ask you to be more quantifiable so that you know what will be the success metrics, or you put the success metrics and that's fine. But in the most fundamental sense, this will be what you will see. If you can see, coming from the problem, we change it to an HMW, and the HMWs pretty much talks about some sort of human experience or uh human-centered approach, right? Okay, so those are HMWs. So this is something that we did for Farmbox during the Alpha Solutions Hackathon, wherein we invite people, no, we invite businesses to join as challenge sponsors. They will give the challenges that they experiences with their internal processes, and probably and this certified design sprint practitioners will join. They will pay for a fee for them to get the training, but the application will be to actual businesses. So we did that last year, and we'll do that again this year to help, of course, MSMEs and startups, of course, in vis-a-vis with these candidates of certified design sprint practitioners to be certified. Okay, so there's gonna be a lot of how might we or HMW, and we do what we call the multi-voting to to select which one are we gonna will be using moving forward the next phase of the design thinking process. So they selected this one. How might we increase the orders from the registered users? So the problem is that there's a lot of users, but the percentage or the ratio of those who bought at least one product is a little low compared, or not little but low compared to that number. Say if you have 100, we only have 10. So how do we maximize that registered users in the platform? Something like that. So in this phase, in the define phase, we also do what we call the customer journey mapping. So we try to so this is one variation, but in the most fundamental sense, just to give you the context, it's pretty much trying to identify the journey or the segments of the journey. So it's basically you entering the store, you find a seat, you order a coffee, you wait for your coffee, and you drink your coffee. And if you focus on the feeling, which is the column, the second column from the last, sorry, the second row from the last row, okay, from the bottom part. So this one. So it's pretty much there's like a plus minus sign. So it means, and then the one that's the dash line, it's pretty much the neutral one. So it's if it's a positive experience, so you go to the positive. If it's like a neutral, it's the usual way. Nothing exceeds your expectation. It's meet expectations probably. So you go on the dash line. If you have like a bad experience or a not that good experience, so you go on the negative side of of the rows. So it's something that we try to understand, or we try to observe, we try to acquire those insights and this information that we will be using, of course, to come up with really what is the problem, and of course to generate that solution. So we are doing this customer journey mapping. So of course, so this is not Starbucks. This is basically Farmbox. Yeah. So we do also this for our startups, or uh, here at Astex we do this also for Astex. We do this for you can actually do this if you have a business, if you happen to work for your employer, so you can do this. So for you to identify whether on which particular part of the user journey or customer journey they are experiencing pain points, and that's going to be like your point of moving forward to innovating and putting solutions to those pain points. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of the define phase. So once we already have the pain point and the target users, now we ideate. So the objective of Ideate, of course, is the idea generation. So we translate the problems now into solutions. We go on a wide variety and large quantity of ideas, okay, for this problem. So we're talking about creativity, combining the unconscious and the conscious with rational thoughts, of course, and imagination, aligned still with the user pain points. Group synergy, we're talking about shared thinking, shared brain, divergent and convergent mode of thinking. Okay, we're gonna be using that in this ideate phase. So again, as mentioned, these are the activities, tools, and deliverables as we discussed earlier. So why do we need to ideate? Of course, this is a basic question. We need to ideate because we need options. It doesn't really give value if you have like a single solution out of your mind without even consulting or without even hearing other thoughts that could probably increase the chance of your solution be more effective and be more sustainable. So that's why we're doing ideation. So be more ready to make good decisions and to build up ideas from diverse experience. See, so what are the rules of ideation? Of course, we don't judge each other's opinions and each other's ideas. We encourage wild ideas. We build on the ideas of others. If there's something that he or she mentioned about a good feature, well, basically you can integrate that to what you already have, and maybe let's see what will happen, right? Stay focused on the topic. You focus on your HMWs. Be visual. You can see post-its. I've mentioned post-its. If we're talking about physical, if we're talking about digital, there's a lot of other tools that you can use. One conversation at a time. So I would suggest one is, for example, if you're using if you're using, say for example, multiple HMWs, and if you can't decide yet, yeah, you can actually run through several rounds. You can do that, but you don't mix. You don't mix the HMWs or the topics. So for you not to entangle everything. Go for quantity. So just like brainstorming, the regular brainstorming that you may already know, ideation is basically eyeing for quantity. It's not quality first because there's going to be the right timing for that. So we're going for quantity for this phase, or for this segment of the ideation phase. So we have two methods. We have diverge and converge, or divergent and convergent method. So when we say divergent mode of thinking, so we're basically from one idea. So just imagine your HMW that you've chosen as a team. So you'll come up with choices. So it's from one HMW to many choices or many options. So once you already have the choices, the next thing that you would want to do is to use convergent mode of thinking. Now that you have so many choices available, which of this would proceed to the next phase, which is the prototype phase? So we're talking about from many to one. So that's basically how it works. So you create choices, and from the choices, you select probably one or get, again, good features of the several choices that were created. So on the divergent mode of thinking, we're talking about brainwriting, problem brainstorming. We're talking about sharing brainstorming, okay? Or we're talking about also tools like Scamper, what if analysis. Well, for convergent, it's more of, prioritization mapping, affinity mapping, and idea evaluation to come up with, which one will proceed to the next phase. So this is how it looks like. So HMW to many options. So that's divergent. That's one to many. If brainwriting. So what it is, it's basically a method in leveraging and building of ideas in a systematic manner. So it's, how do we do this? We define the problem. Probably it's the HMW, and each person should brainstorm 3 ideas into 2 minutes on a piece of paper, then have them pass the sheet of paper to the person on the left. So have the next person to build upon or add to the existing ideas by writing or drawing their own ideas underneath the previous ideas that was provided. So you probably, or you can give 3 minutes to this person, and then you repeat the process up until such time that all of the members of the group that you're facilitating was able to complete all of the activity. Okay, and then share all the ideas on the table and pick out a couple of outstanding ones. Okay, so this is called the brainwriting. So it's like you're building up on the idea or adding up on the idea or features maybe of the solutions from one perspective to another. So we also have crazy eights. So if you have gone through my course on introduction to design sprint, Google's version of design thinking for innovation. So that's pretty much explained also there. So this is if you can see the picture here, there's like a paper, and then you fold the paper in uh 8 partitions. So it's pretty much you have 8 minutes to come up with 8 ideas. Of course, in relation to your identified user pain points. So that's probably represented again by your HMW. So people are given 1 minute to produce one idea. And at the end of 8 minutes, you'll have like 8 ideas or 8 iterations. So when you do this thing, it's not you have to write ideas. It's again through sketching. Okay? So you have to sketch. Okay? So just like this, we're like showing you an example of a donation screen. But if you can see, there's a lot of variations from one solution to another. It's not a typical narrative that you will see. It's more of sketches. Okay. So we also have the Scamper. So Scamper stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, magnify, minify, put to add to another use, eliminate, rearrange, or reverse. So that's basically um, a framework that we also use to come up with breakthrough innovations or maybe out of the box thinking. So we just follow this prescribed questions here. So we're prior pandemic, I'm running this whenever I'm invited by students to talk about innovation in their schools. So I make it a point to have like 4 items or 5 items that they will be competing on. They'll have to draw lots on. Let's say, for example, how would you innovate using the Scamper method? A simple, I don't know what's the proper English term for sando, but yeah, that one, or maybe a pen, or maybe a mug, so something like that. So this is one that could push you through the boundaries. If you could remember the slide wherein we first saw this 2 or 3 slides ago. Okay. So when you have now already your alternative solutions, of course, so these options will go through the convergent mode of thinking so that we can come up with the solution that we want to pursue. So we're talking about the use of prioritization mapping, tracing. In the y-axis, we see the benefit from low to high. In the x-axis, we're seeing the ease of implementation from left to right, from easy to hard, and probably if it's something that is easy to implement and with high benefit, so we do it now. If it's something that is difficult to implement but with high benefit, we can just park it. And if we have like a hard time to implement it, but the benefits will be low, so we have to discard it. So something like that. So we try to prioritize using this tool. We also have affinity mapping. So for this is basically clustering our ideas, okay, or our votes or our thoughts about it. So yeah, those are tools. Remember, we need to decide to pursue the solution that will, of course, address the user's pain points. Okay? So that's what's important. So again, just to remind and reiterate and reinforce, this will be the activities, tools to use, and deliverables of the third phase. So after we have ideated several options and have chosen which will go through the next phase, the phase that is next to be done is the fourth phase, of course, the prototype. So the prototype, the objective is to build to think. So it's pretty much creating, again, a representation of your solution. So your prototype can be in any physical form or digital form. Okay. In physical form, it could be post-its, or it could be a role-playing activity. It could be a space, an object, an interface. So I think an object should be another bullet, and or a storyboard or a wireframe for those who are in the technology practice. So here are again the activities, tool to use, and the deliverables of the fourth phase. So why do we need to prototype? Of course, if we don't have a prototype, we don't have something to test out. So first, we need, of course, prototype to find design issues as early as possible so that we'll not invest too much resources and then only to find out that these are things or maybe items or features that will not work or is not something valuable to our customers or to our users. So it helps us to iterate more quickly on the design concept. It compares the design variations quickly. So if you happen to go to like LinkedIn, this is a professional platform. So there are like user experience researchers or user interface researchers who are using LinkedIn to ask people which design is better, which interface is better. So that's pretty much following the design thinking process. Gather design feedback better. It's a good presentation tool, of course. So just like if you happen to experience this during college or in one of your college subjects, so we are asked to do prototypes, right? So if you're in the corporate, you'll be asked to, so if this is your project, if this is your proposal, How can you is there a possibility for you to present a prototype so that people and stakeholders will be more, knowledgeable, or maybe they can actually not just imagine but to really see what could you deliver as a solution to them. Encourage collaboration. Of course, this cannot be done with you and yourself only. You have to collaborate with teams and different organizational units. Cheap, fast, and easy. So prototypes should be not costly. So that's basically what is being told to us by item number 7. And gather design feedback better. So these are 8 reasons why do we need to do a prototype. So if we talk about low fidelity prototypes, so these are some examples. If you can see, this will be sample, user interfaces for watch and smartphone. See, you don't have to like have sophisticated prototypes. So these are electronic devices, but prototypes are not electronic. See, so those are called low fidelity prototypes. The low fidelity means they're much pretty away from what is the real thing, right? So pretty much using like art materials just like this. So wireframe prototype examples. So we're talking about probably platforms, softwares, websites, apps, something like that. So you can use user interface flow sketch or web sketch interface. I can still remember when we had the hackathon, they have no idea on how to what do you call this, create websites or even use WordPress. So what they did was just to put it in a PowerPoint or Excel, or even just sketch it on a piece of paper, and that's it. So it doesn't have to be sophisticated. For as long as you can get insights, or you can ask insights coming from your users, then that's fine. Of course, the levels would be different um, depending on the need from the of certain insights that you want to get from your users. So this is an example of a Markup Prototype. I use this for my certified Sprint Master certification from Design Sprint Brazil. So pretty much consolidating movie house schedules. So in one place. So it's like more of an aggregator app. So something like that. 3D prototypes, of course. Storyboarding. So these are some examples. Yeah. So we do prototype, of course, so that we have something to test out with our users. Now, prototype is a rough representation. So it doesn't have to be perfect, because our mindset would be continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. So we've seen many organizations failing on this. We've seen many organizations, small and big, trying to perfect their products and services. But at the end of the day, what happens is that someone or a competing organization, or not even competing organization, maybe a small firm or a startup, offer that solution, and then bang, they're out of the picture already. So continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. Again, just to reinforce, these are the activities, the tools, and the deliverables of the fourth phase of the design thinking process, which is the prototype. And once the prototype is ready, then we are now on the last phase, which is the test phase. Objective, of course, is to ask for feedback, user insights using your prototype. So we want to show people your prototype, let them interact with it, create experiences, the user experience, okay, and then compare. If there are multiple prototypes you want to compare, or if you have like ideal scenarios or conditions that you're expecting how these users will interact to your prototype, then you compare to that, or maybe a benchmark. So these are the activities, tool to use, and deliverables of the last phase of the design thinking process. So why do we need to test? Because we want to validate and iterate as quickly as possible. We want to match the expectations of the end users as they interact with our solutions. And then we evaluate their feedbacks, integrate it to the next iteration, and communicate the results to your end users or probably your sponsors of why you're doing a design thinking project. Okay. So this is something that I also use for design sprint, but hopefully you still find enjoyment in watching this simple low fidelity user testing.
Okay, so your task now is to open the MEng-IE app.
Okay. I mean, my thumb on there. Cool. Nice. Nice.
Give me a moment. I'll just fix the volume. I think it's too low.
Now your task is to register and log in.
Okay.
You've completed the task.
Yeah.
The next task is to remove the minutes tile from your home screen.
Okay. Oh. Oh, that one. Cool.
Well done. Your next task is to place the add £10 top-up tile to your home screen.
Okay, cool. Nice. Add £10 top up. Item added to screen. Oh, back.
Well done. Your next task is to rearrange the tiles on your home screen as you see fit.
Yeah, okay. Can I, so let's, I use this all the time, so I want to move that. Can I move it to the top left? And then minutes, allowance, mobile data, yeah, probably. Can I change these around or not? No. These top ones, okay.
Top one. Oh, sorry.
So changes, cool.
Well done, you've completed the task.
All right, so that pretty much gives us an idea of how low fidelity prototypes looks like. At the same time, how user testing looks like. So if you see there's like a list of tasks that you would want to see being done by the users and how the user will interact to your solution. So that's just one type. So depending on the type of prototype that you were able to come up with, user testing will depend on that, of course. Okay. So yeah, there's a thing called user feedback, of course. So where we put the notes, the background of the customer, the pros of concept or prototype, the advantage and disadvantages or pros and cons, and then any other feedback that you were able to get by observing how the user interacts with the solution. And then we evaluate if there are, again, multiple prototypes that you're using. So you can use evaluation criteria like the functionality, the cost, the aesthetics, usability, maintenance, and others to evaluate, of course, which one would you want to, of course, proceed to iteration and eventually launch as the first version of your final process, product, or service. So that's pretty much high-level surface of the last phase or the test phase of the design thinking process. Okay, so just to sum up before we go to the Q&A, if there are questions, that basically we have this framework of design thinking. It starts with empathizing, knowing your user, and defining the pain points of these users, ideating, coming up with several solutions, and then identifying which of the solutions is suitable for the user pain points, prototyping, creating a rough draft of your our representation of your solution, and testing, showing your solutions or showing your prototype to your users and getting insights and feedback so that you can iterate your solution to its optimal condition. So that's pretty much of the design thinking process. So we have empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So let me leave you with a quote from Albert Einstein. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So if you're here and you're not seeing results on the things that you're doing in your school works and in your in your job right now, maybe it's time for you to try out some other strategies or some other approaches, and let's wish for positive changes. And I think design thinking is one of the things that you could probably use, especially when you're faced with creative problems. So with that, I am happy to be with you in this particular learning session. This is a small group, but I still enjoyed sharing my insights and experience about design thinking. And I'm now open to any questions that you might have. So if you have questions, please feel free to type them in our Zoom chat box or in our, of course, YouTube channel. Okay, are there any questions? If none, I'll be shifting to this screen again. So if you have questions, you please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at this link on LinkedIn. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to be connected with you and try to answer your questions even outside the session. So trying to share my LinkedIn account both here at Zoom and at YouTube. So if you don't have any questions, yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining me in this learning session for tonight's Alpha TV. So for you to get your certification, your certificate rather, all you have to do is, of course, to follow the instructions that will be given. Okay. So fill up the attendance form that will be shared on the screen later on, and please make sure that you are able to complete that within the next 30 minutes. So please don't forget to like and subscribe to our pages and social media accounts. We have our Facebook account, LinkedIn account, and YouTube channel at Aztec Speech Academy. And of course, your favorite learning sessions are archived as e-learning courses with free e-certificates at aztecspeech.com. So please do create your account and enjoy free learning sessions and e-certificates from this platform. We have paid courses happening. We have the Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt. We also have the self-paced format. We have the Lean Six Sigma Green Belt live online classes. We have the self-paced for Green Belt. We have an upcoming Agile Scrum certification on July 2 and 3. We have a Black Belt that is happening on July 23 onwards. A data science with FITO leading to becoming an Alpha certified data analyst this July. Project management certification tomorrow. Alpha Kaizen professional on July 30 and 31. Certified internal quality auditor on Saturdays of July. And of course, data visualization on Sunday. This was moved to June 26. This is a masterclass, of course, using Tableau. Okay, so you can join our programs as 5 persons, but you only have to pay for 4 persons. We are actively looking for partner organizations and individual ambassadors. Don't forget to create your own account at askthexpage.com/courses. And if you're looking for a review for IEE certification, there is iExcel. If you are trying to be immersed with startups, helping farmers, there's Formbox. And of course, Grace Apparel, which is our partner for our merchandise. So they have their own Shopee and Lazada store. And of course, we are an official partner already of Startup Podcast PH, our official podcast partner. So try to go and search for their podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And yeah, so you can now start getting a screenshot of this. And we'll, of course, with the limited number of resources that we have right now, so we apologize with the delay of the e-certificate, but rest assured, this will be processed in the next probably 1 or 2 weeks. Thank you again, and hope you enjoyed and learned something from tonight's session. And let's see each other again. By next month, we'll be taking on Lean learning session starting July 1 with a US-based consultant, Michael Parent, talking about the Lean innovation cycle. So please make sure that you'll attend that session. That's going to be a wonderful session. So thank you, everyone. Let's continue to be #significantly better, and see you on the next Alpha TV episode. Bye. Bye, everyone.